If you go in and start try to pull things out of you that aren't in there, you'll panic. But if it's there and it wants to get out, then you've got a good conversation with your soul.
Viki, why did you come to Hollywood?
Oh, actually, I flipped a coin. New York or California. And California won or lost, whichever, we don't know which.
And why so trusting something as maybe simple as a coin?
Capricious as a coin. Because I had offers from both sides. And so then it was just random it's a good idea sometimes to, instead of having a plan in cement, which is illusionary anyway, you might as well be more loose about it. So that's why I did it that way.
Has that been a way you've lived your life where sometimes you realize that overthinking something, it won't work, that you're going to let fate decide it?
Well, I don't let fate decide it. I create it. It's like, what is my choice? This is my choice. Okay, then that's how I'm going to make it happen. So, that's a way that we all do it. We don't usually always do it consciously.
What did you believe would happen when you got to Los Angeles?
Well, the year before I came here, I was at broadcast school, and I asked the head of the department to write a letter so that I could go and have a reconnaissance, and see everybody in Hollywood before I came the next year, hoping that I could get a job beforehand. And so I sent it out to 400 addresses, just everybody, directors, cinematographers, writers, anybody that I could get an address, I sent it. And I got a lot of response, much more than I would have thought. And I think it was because I wasn't here officially yet. I was, a student wanting to come and see. And so then people love to be, to answer questions and to be mentors. They love that. So I had all these responses, and I had 2 weeks that I was here, and I was running around all over. If people should only know that you could get that much information with the actual high-profile people, it was pretty amazing to be able to do that. And I did get 2 jobs out of it.
Were these handwritten cards by any chance, or you actually had a letter?
A letter that was a referral letter from the head of the department from the broadcasting school. It was Southern Illinois University. And I wrote the letter, but he signed it.
Sure.
And it was very effective. So it was wonderful because I got to see everybody, every show that was on, every film that was being created. Pretty good.
And where did you end up landing once you got here?
When I got here, I landed at, I had a small production house. It was a bungalow. It was a real wonderful, sweet bungalow on the Paramount lot. And I was I don't know what, I had a big lofty title that was bigger than the bungalow. It was just this little place. But the guy, every time the phone would ring, he would run out and he'd say, I'm not here. And so then everybody was calling he owed money to. So I figured I didn't have job security there. And the other job I got before I came was with a fine art photographer. I was an animator, and beautiful, beautiful film that we did. And I had to figure out how to have the regular job and this one shot film together. And it was the whole range of what you get in Hollywood, which would be one that maybe wasn't so good and didn't last, and the other one that was extremely beautiful with good family created with all the people, but also doesn't last because it's wrapped. You've done it and you've completed the thing. So it was a whole range of what happens in Hollywood.
And so you learned the art of sort of an upbeat deflection when people would call and ask for someone, and you can, there's an art where you'll never know if something's really wrong behind the scenes.
Oh no, I would tell him the truth.
Oh, you would? Okay.
He ran out and he said, "Don't tell them that I'm not here."
Wow. Okay.
That's what I said.
Okay.
Never perjure yourself.
No, but there are ways, I know, having worked at law firms and things, that you can phrase it in a certain way. But
I
anyway,
know, but I wouldn't want to.
Yeah, no, I get it. I just, having answered the phone myself, I was reprimanded many times, so that's why I wasn't sure.
But it was interesting. He was a wonderfully interesting character, and in fact, I wrote I wrote a book about him. This fellow who had this idea that he was the grand producer, but he couldn't pay his bills. So it was an interesting experience to have.
And did you see that lesson early on of biting off more than one could chew, or was where his money troubles maybe out of his control?
Well, I think his character was a kind of a Hollywood character. This extreme desire of being somebody who he wasn't able to be, and creating out of that, and creating a kind of a mess, and also kind of a lovable mess. There were a lot of people who really cared for him deeply. There was one particular very high-powered actress in Hollywood, and he carried her through a lot of her early times when she was trying to break in, and she adored him, but he was just a big old mess. And, we can all love a big old mess person.
Yeah, that's true. If they're fun, yeah. When did you get the idea that you wanted to write for television?
I always wanted to write, and I always did from when I was a little kid. I always wrote stories and books. In fact, I just finished my autobiography for my whole life, which I had in mind, I was going to finish that at 20. Well, you can't finish an autobiography of your entire life at 20 if you're going to live until beyond 20. So I had to continue to write it all the years of my life. And now I've finished it, and it's being published this year.
At what point did you come up with the idea for how to write a movie in 21 days?
Well, I'll tell you the story of that. So I was living in Greece and finishing, working on my autobiography way back, when. And I knew it was time to leave. What I needed to get from Greece, I got from Greece. I was living on Hydra. And I left there and went to New York. And in New York, I went to the New York Public Library, and I was reading all the Publishers Weekly, because even though I wasn't speaking Greek when I was in Greece, I was rusty on, sound bites, buzzword, American pitch stuff. So I, read up on all of that, and then I started calling agents, and I got Connie Clausen on the phone. She was a very top agent, and in perfect New York style, she said, "Well, come over right away." So I hopped a cab and got over there, and I'm going up the elevator. Now, mind you, I was wanting to open space in publishing for the book that I have now finished, which is years later. And I knew that it wasn't going to be immediate, but I didn't know how long it was going to take me to open space in publishing. So I'm going up the elevator to see Connie Clausen, and I'm thinking, okay, now what shall I offer her? What do I have at the bottom of my heart? And at the bottom of my heart was all the work that I had done in Hollywood, in Blood, Sweat, and Tears and everything else. And that was a very good pool of beautiful richness, to look through. So anyway, I'm going up the elevator, and somewhere between the 6th and the 9th floor, that book came down into me. And then she was on the 16th floor. I got off and made the deal.
So you thought of it in the elevator on the ride up?
Yeah, because what the inner movie method is that it's always alive in you, and all you have to do is ask. And a lot of times people don't talk to themselves. They don't have a good, clear relationship to their very own self. And so if you can let that happen, and you'll see how quickly it happens, because it's already in you. I didn't know that, when I got in the elevator, but I sure did know it when I got out of the elevator.
Did you also pitch the autobiography?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what was her response to that as a, you said 20-year-old?
She said, "Pooey on that." She said, "Oh, is this Rod McEwen?" Rod McEwen was her client, and he was the best-selling, author that was going on at the time. But she was just, "Oh, he's disgusting." She was very, very funny in New York. Really great agent. She was just wonderful. When you walk into her office, which was also her home, there were books all over. They were all bestsellers. The entire room was filled with all of her books that she had agented.
So a tough cookie, and knew what she wanted.
Knew what she wanted, and for her, she said that because I believe that in her infinite wisdom, she didn't know this, but in her infinite wisdom, I needed to sustain that book for all of these years of my life. Not this one. This one is flourishing and doing, all by itself. But the one that's to be coming out, the autobiography. And if she said, "Oh yes, dear, this is lovely. It'll be very nice when it's finished," where is that going to give you the impetus? So I had to have her like at 3 a.m. in the morning, on my shoulder, and just like, and then I could say back, "Well, okay, now let's see. That's what. All right, I'm switching that. I'm changing that. I'm doing this. I'm doing that."
So you needed her. I think what Stephen King says, like he still hears maybe his high school teacher or somebody in his mind when he's writing. He needs sort of that tough audience. Was she your tough audience?
I don't need a tough audience, but she was, and it was interesting to me how I think what it does is it keeps you completely ever in touch with your vulnerability. It's all about feelings, and and the feeling is all there. So then I had to stand behind what I was expressing, anything that I wanted to say. I used her crabbiness to be very clear about what I'm saying. There's nothing ephemeral about it or ethereal. It's something substantial. It's something that you can realize, can handle, can hold in your hand.
And during that elevator ride up to her office where this book was sort of downloaded to you, why 21 days? Why not 14 days or?
21 is the time frame of a habit, when you are able to change a habit. And with screenwriting, many people take forever, or it's impossible, or they can't do it, or they're looking at it 7 years later, or any of those things. And if you give them a time frame and a ticking time, then it becomes concrete, it becomes possible, it becomes solidified. And so then you can do it from there. Originally, it was called the Inner Movie Method, How to Write a Movie in 21 Days. But of course, in Hollywood, she sold it right away. She sold it in 20 minutes. She walked across her room, picked up the phone and sold it. And she flipped it, because I said, the Inner Movie Method, How to Write a Movie in 21 Days. By the time she got to the phone to call the publisher, she said, How to Write a Movie in 21 Days, the Inner Movie Method.
Fascinating. And did it take you 21 days to write the book?
No, it took, I don't know, I don't remember how long it took. But at the time, I was teaching a class at UCLA in screenwriting, and it was wonderful because the students would raise their hands and say, well, this is what I'm having trouble with. And then I would answer it, and I think, oh, okay, all right, all right. So then each thing became a living response to what people were having a hard time with. And then, that's what came into the book.
So it wasn't where she picked up the phone and said, all right, kid, I'm going to give you a chance or whatever, and then you were like, now I actually have to do this. Were you?
Oh, no.
Was there any panic, or
Oh, no.
you were ready to go?
Boom.
Okay.
Well, because it called forth itself. Like if you go in and start try to pull things out of you that aren't in there, you'll panic. But if it's there and it wants to get out, then you've got a good conversation with your soul.
You say there are two things writers need to know if they want to write a screenplay. The first one is you'll need to know what you want to write, and you'll need to know how to write it.
Yeah, don't you think?
Well, if we start with number one, so how does a writer know what they want to write?
That's what I'm saying about you have to be in good conversational relationship to your very own self. What's going on in you? Did you really want to write the Rambo 12? Was that real thrilling to you and exciting, or what? And always, 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 it's what's going on in your life right now. In fact, many screenplays have different stages and phases of how we progress through a process, through a life framework, time. And so look to see what's going on for you. Like, for instance, in a film, you've got where the character is looking at circumstance outside themselves, and they're feeling powerless to it. And then the issue comes up, we've got to do something about it because it's untenable. They can't, stay in that situation anymore. And then they maybe start inroads into, they're scared, but they, start making some changes. And then, the next and the next. All these progressions are in a screenplay. Well, look to your own life. What's going on in your life now? And some people are at a place where they're looking at external circumstances and they're fearful or blocked or powerless around them. That's where you start your story. Or if you are at a stage of that you are starting to really branch out and finding new parts of yourself, and you're wanting to try those out, and you're being brave, and you're at the superhero aspect of yourself, then that's the aspect, the start of your screenplay. And everybody's always in a stage or a phase. So if you're very familiar with what you're really going through at that time, that's your screenplay.
What if someone says, well, I want to write for the market. My story's boring, but I know that they need the Rambo whatever with a twist.
Yeah, no, they don't.
They don't? Okay.
No. If you are thinking that, then you are looking outside of yourself, and that is where you are powerless, because you're saying, oh, well, I have my story has no value, nothing about me, it's only that. That's what they want. That's what they want. Well, see what you've done to yourself. You've belittled yourself, and you've made more important something outside yourself that means nothing. And if those are the stories that are out now, you're already 3 years behind. So don't do that. Always go for one. Well, my favorite group of, I used to have I don't know what you'd call it, a group, I suppose. It was Healing the Hollywood Heart. Why people want to be rich and famous, what to do about it. And the subgroup of that was so interesting. It was men at 35 who wanted to land on their manhood. They had to write the best film then, and they had a breakthrough, and this was it. And they got to get their Ferrari. Everything was urgent in that. And I love that subgroup because they were so desirous and so longing to become. And so the whole idea of becoming, I believe that every story is a becoming story. And that's where it's rich and valuable and not boring at all. Because if you're trying to become, you got something to say to everybody else. That's what story is all about. For the millenniums around the campfire, people wanted to hear stories because they wanted to see, well, how are you doing it? How are you making it out through being a human being? Maybe I can get some clues from you. Tell me that story. Let me be inspired. Let me get a tip or two. So becoming stories are it. So you always want to tap that becoming aspect of yourself. Go down to the tip of your heart. There's where it is. It's just dripping juicily down into your hand.
And have you worked with those who have a very hard time accessing that, and it's almost impossible?
Humans.
All humans. Oh, okay. Wait, let's see. Yeah, I think there's some humans on the earth. Okay.
Yeah. I think most of them are called screenwriters.
Okay, so but it seems like screenwriters are willing to kind of put themselves through that pain. They almost, maybe there's a masochistic element to them.
That could be. That doesn't necessarily have to be. A lot of times I'll get a call from somebody who forgot how to breathe, or they have a lump someplace. They're sure that they're going to die of it. Screenwriters are really good at hypochondria. They can think of things that they were never thought of. However, they can also have things that just human beings have, but on a screenwriter's body, it's got such possibilities.
Right, too much research on some of these self-diagnosis sites.
So if you put your hand right between in the breastbone there, you will find that there is something there. What's that? Oh my gosh! Oh, it's been there all along, and not to worry. Even other than screenwriters have that. So.
And the arteries might not be corroded. I might live. Okay.
Yeah, they're going to be fine. Think of something else.
That's great.
And many, 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 many people get the flu on page 90.
Oh, why is that?
Because it's page 90. What are they going to do now? They have to close on this script, and they have to put it out to people, or they have to take it to the producer, and so you have to pause and get a flu, go to bed for 3 days, and then you're ready to bring it forward.
Do you think screenwriters get nervous if things start going too well?
Well, humans get nervous when things start going too well, but don't do that, people. Don't do that. No, it's a new age. Let's just all think that everything will go well, and then everything will, and isn't that more fun?
Well, yeah, but if someone's always on an uptick, does that really make for good screenwriting? Don't we need those peaks and valleys?
So I think that the peaks and valleys are they're a new way to look at how to continue to expand. Instead of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, there's another model that can happen. What about the model of going forward, opening, expanding further? You see, it's still dramatic, it's still vital and exciting, but it's expansive. You don't have to go into pain and suffering unless you want to. That's a lot of fun for people.
Well, actors go there too, and
Yeah.
And there is a genre for that, and people do resonate. They find those movies,
Right, and also in the arena of Hollywood, I get calls all the time from people in Hollywood, set designers, producers, directors, everybody, And they have to. I have to remind them that it's just pretend, because Hollywood has its own set of dramas to it. So you have to know how to ride those.
Sure. And that's why I asked in previous questions, did you learn a way to deflect things in a cheerful way? Because sometimes there has to be this element of, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, that you want to always seem like you're a team player.
I'm not a team player. I never was one. And my coming through Hollywood was always with original work. Like all my friends were on staff, and you can really get a lot materialized on staff. But I never wanted that, because I wanted to do my own, work projects.
Sure, and I can respect someone that owns that. Do you think that's okay, as long as you know that about yourself?
That I'm not a team player?
Yeah.
I'm happy to not be a team player.
But at what point did you own that, or that was always part of who you were?
There's no, if you're not a team player, you're not, and you're never going to be, and that's, whatever you are, that's great, instead of whatever you are is an obstacle or wrong. So, you go with your original design, and, and that's the thing that puts you forward.
How do we look inside of ourselves and find the story that we want to tell?
Well, I think everybody has their way in. Like, for instance, when I was doing the Healing the Hollywood Heart group, I was also doing subgroups of people who had difficulty with their weight, or with money, or with some malady, some sickness and such. So those are all ways in, where you're interested in listening to what your body has to say to you. Whereas maybe you wouldn't on another subject. But if you bring up the subject of money, well, you're all ears. You want to hear about that. So the way in, I think, is the particular thing that tends to elude you. The thing that no matter what, you can be very successful at all other aspects, but darn, you can't get relationships right. And so then we go there and heal that core wound. There's little something that was going on that you have a belief about really early, and you just keep having that belief still stuck in your craw, and then that keeps you from the rest of your becoming.
Interesting. So if we have an investment banker who's always been successful, their screenplay isn't necessarily going to be, about earning money and coming up, because maybe that's not their Achilles heel. It sounds like they've already figured that out.
Maybe so. Maybe they are scared silly to make sure that they always have money come in because of Dad. Dad said you better save your allowance. And if you don't, I'm gonna do whatever to you. So everything shows up in those ways. And also the father issue is a very, very big one, especially in Hollywood, because people come to Hollywood because it's the father. And then they are in relationship to how they were with their father. If they can't get the head of the studio on the phone, well, they were abandoned by Dad. So they're just playing that out on a larger scale. So there's, it's so personal and intimate and quiet and close to your heart. And all you have to do is reveal that to yourself, and then you know everything about yourself, and you know what you can do then to protect those parts or develop those parts or or relinquish those parts.
Wow, that's fascinating, because I always thought that too about corporate America. I thought it was almost like working, you were trying to please a parent.
Please, Dad, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Please,
fascinating.
Mom, yeah.
Right. So it's like this, and do you think that's why sometimes people on the indie level are like, oh, I hate these suits and all this stuff? It's because reminds them of a rejecting parent?
Yes, or they reject the parent. You know, they don't want to have anything to do with the rigidity or the tradition. They want to be, you know, free thinking, and so. But it's all just about your fundamental belief systems. You know, it was interesting. Yesterday, I was at the pool, and there was a man. You know, you've seen this where it's like he was totally conked out on the chaise lounge, just, you know. And that's happened to us sometimes too. You know, it's like, well, and where do you go? Where do we go when we completely leave the body? And here's the body is just wunk. And I was watching this, and I noticed that without his belief system, his consciousness in his body was completely different. It was like the calves of his legs were different shape, and his toes and his arm was hanging down. And then then there was a noise, and he came back into the body. But he didn't. You know how something like you come back in and then you go back out again. So he came in briefly. The whole body completely changed back up, and I could see. Look at those where he holds those beliefs, were coming back into the body. And then he, went back out again, but he didn't go as deeply as he was. He went, to a different place. So he was holding his body completely differently. And you could see it. You could see, like in his stomach, those, what I call the emotion bucket, where you hold knots in your tummy since 3 years old. You know what was going on then, and there it all is. And it's held in the body as trauma. It's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So then we govern in that way. We're carrying our body and our belief system and all our patterning is there, and so then that's how we are, what we believe, how we're progressing. So if somebody is corporate, or if somebody is indie, or whatever the thing is, it's all the mix-up of all the pieces from early on.
How would a writer know that they are writing the wrong story, or that they have the wrong premise?
They never have the wrong story. They never have the wrong premise. Because it's all, story is not arena. Like, for instance, they might say that they might be assigned a baseball story. They don't know anything about baseball, so they think this must be wrong, but they're going to take the job anyway. But the story is not about baseball. The story is about this person who has that dad and that mom and those beliefs around that. So you see, story is underneath the arena. It's just told in these areas.
Sure.
But for everybody, there's a kryptonite.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how can we tap into the right type of kryptonite for that character?
Well, it's just there. You can't help it. It's there, and a lot of times you might not notice, but you're expressing it, and you might not articulate that it's this problem that you've got, but it is. Like, for instance, let's say our hero says he has many girlfriends, and he can't keep a relationship going. So then he'll say, oh, well, it's a problem with these girls. But is it? So his kryptonite is within him. It's Sally kryptonite.
Sure.
That's what he thinks. He thinks it's outside of himself.
I believe one of your first assignments is for writers to imagine viewing their story in a movie theater.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just go. Everybody who wants to be a screenwriter has seen many, 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 many films. So we're all experts at watching film. So watch yours. Watch yours in your head, and feel it all the way along the way. And you'll be amazed. What's great about that is you could write out all the beat cards for the entire film if you just watch it, reeling in your head.
Okay, and what if though we see the audience enjoying it? Like, let's suppose we're in the back row and we're watching our movie and we're like, yeah, and they're getting these parts and they're laughing at the right spot and they're quiet in the parts that are sad. But in reality, a lot of times people don't see you the way you think that they should be seeing you. How do we reconcile that? Or we're in the dream phase that all that doesn't matter yet?
You mean, tell me a little more about that.
Well, it sounds great to like, okay, they're going to watch my movie and then I'm going to come up and do the Q&A and everyone's going to give me this round of applause. But in real life, there's going to be like 5 people that are going to be like, yeah, that was stupid. Why'd you do that? So we see it from our perspective, but are we just in the dream building stage at this point?
So in other words, what you're saying is you're looking at your film as an external. What I'm saying is look at your film as the story of the film. Create the film. Like you're watching it and you're saying, oh, we're going to need a bigger boat. Oh, that's great. And then what happens after that? And then the shark comes and then, see, so you're creating it that way. You can then imagine what you want with the Q&A after you've created it.
Okay, so we're tapping into kind of like what you said when you rode up the elevator and you were between one floor and the other and this book was already there. It was like downloaded to you. Mm-hmm. So we're tapping into that download?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think I understand. So it's not how is the audience going to perceive me? What are they going to ask me? It's like, how am I going to get lost in this story? Because if I'm lost in it, then maybe others will be too.
Well, it's none of your business about them yet. Let that go. That's a long way off. Do the film first. Because if you don't create the film first, how are you going to have a Q&A in the theater? Let the thing glow in the dark in you.
I like that.
It's just between you and it. It's like nobody else's business at that time. You want to keep that to yourself. And then you can start thinking, I wonder how I want to feel in the theater,
Right. When you said that glow in the dark, that's great. I was picturing E.T.'s finger for a second.
Yeah.
And how emotional, like this creature that once it came to life was for so many youngsters and, watching it for the first time.
Yeah, so then you can get that feeling when you're creating, because your intimate relationship with your story it's got all those feelings. I mean, it makes you cry. It makes you swell up. It makes you, feel all those deep, wonderful feelings. So yes, you're in the business of putting those expressions on the page. How to get it from your heart to the page.
What about writing something commercial or writing something that we know can sell? What are your thoughts on
Well, how do
this?
we know it can sell?
Well, that's a good point. Okay. We've done research.
What's commercial is, you've spent your whole life growing up and being this unique person. Express it. Otherwise, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're making a loaf of bread? The one that's going to make it over the top, Rocky, is always the anomaly. It's always that thing that they would never go for, and then they go for it. Because it's a skyrocketed, pure thing. It's like nobody can stop it. It just, because everybody stops themselves beforehand. All those bright lights and all that wonderful, brilliant gleams of light are all stopped down in each person. Don't do that to yourself or the community. Let it come out.
How does a writer know if their idea is a novel, a movie, a play, a song?
So they're each different ways of telling the same, like if you use the same story and then how they tell it. Like in a novel, it's introspective. So you can climb in and out of the thoughts of the character, and you can really have a real internal dialogue going on. But on film, you have to find ways of showing what the character is thinking, but often humans will say and think entirely differently. Like they'll say, "I'm not angry." Well, what do we glean from this? So you have to find different ways of expressing that in a film. And a song it can be a mini movie. It can be a story, beginning, middle, and end. Like in country music, because there's it's like, well, she left me at the truck, and then and now we have the babies. So there's a beginning, middle, and end. But it's a short. It's just one thought, boom, 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 and that can be a song. It doesn't have to be a whole film. This one, recently, they got the Oscar, Billie English, what's her name? And it was the story of Barbie, the doll.
You're talking about...
What am I made for? It is the name of the song. What am I made for? So that's a wonderful becoming story. What's Barbie made for? What's Billy made for? What's any little girl playing with the doll made for?
Right. What if someone says, though, I want to do all of them? This is going to be a book first, then a movie, then they'll do a song from it. They have this big, you talked about the group that you had, these very, motivated and driven young men that were in this one group. And, this is actually going to be all of it. What would you say? Choose which?
No, you don't have to choose. Do them all, sure. But each one has a different, like for instance, in a play, it usually tends to be one person. If you're discussing a theory of life or something like that, you would do it through one person, because like the proscenium arch is small. It's like there's that. So you want to take this whole ideal and send it through the story of one person. So each one of the characteristics are different for each one of those particular works of art. And yeah, you can do them all with the same story, certainly so, but you need to have different techniques to be able to do each thing.
Of the two things that writers need to know, the first is what you want to write, and then the second is you'll need to know how to write it. So what are the most important factors for knowing how to write it?
Well, the ones that you don't know.
Okay.
Because the ones that you do know, you don't even know, and they naturally work out. I'm not a believer in knowing theme and plot and, this and that, because that's all head stuff, and then you can't really write it anyway from that. But whatever it is that you don't know, then that's the thing to find out about. And a lot of times people feel like, well, they don't know how to write it, therefore they better not start. They better not go to step one. But the truth is about step two is that you have to do step one. And then step two shows up. Really simple. But if you think, well, but I don't know how, and I don't know, where to go from step one, then you're stopped. So you have to be willing to take step one, and step one will always take you to two, and so forth.
So then are we fine-tuning it in the revision stages? If I've never written a screenplay before, but I know what I want to write, and I'm just going to write it, then eventually, though, someone might look at it and say, okay, but this is sort of a jumbled mess, even though I understand it. At what point do we put some type of structure to it? or we don't? Do we hone in on it at some point? I know, but it doesn't have to be where this is going to happen by page whatever, because that feels maybe too formulaic. But at some point,
No, it's not formulaic. It's original form. You always have to have structure.
okay, so maybe that's what I'm
Yeah,
remiss in saying. Okay.
and the structure is the character. In other words, it's not a scaffolding that's outside of the person. It's that, what drives the person. And you know that with your friends and or getting acquainted with somebody. You're just fascinated by, oh, that's an interesting way that person makes up their life. Now, why do you suppose? So their structure is their character. It's completely original to their idea of how they go about having a life. So that's what structure is. And the best and highest way is, for instance, if you close your eyes, and I use alpha, which is really good. It's like you close your eyes and you roll your eyes up into your eyelids, and you're in alpha. And then in alpha, it's like what you are in a shower, or if you're driving for a long way, although don't drive with your eyes shut.
Yeah.
But it's that rote kind of zone to be in. And when you're in that, then all of the images will start coming to you. And you can write them down on 3x5 cards. And the use of 3x5 cards, of course, is because you can't write much on them, which is good because then it keeps it simple. And then that's a beat. That's one scene. Then here's another 3x5 card, and that's another scene that you're seeing and you're feeling, but those are coming in. And then what you're doing from that is you're progressing your character from where they are to where they're going to get to. And then that becomes your structure along the way.
I love it. So we're alpha is not quite asleep, like the gentleman you mentioned earlier
Right.
in the lounge chair. This is where we're sort of between sleep.
Well, you're in a state of not coming down on yourself. Like, oh, I don't know how to do this. I can't do this. What am I gonna? I better get a real job. In alpha, you don't think of those things because you're in a mellow zone, and then these things come up. I believe in the random draft, and what I mean by the random draft is once you close your eyes and you envision your story. When you picture your hero, walking through the story, then you open your eyes and you write as fast as you possibly can in a random draft. In other words, just dump it all down, whatever it is that you've got. Surprise yourself, and you'll be amazed at how much more you have than you thought you had. Like, for instance, when I would do classes, I would ask the kids and the adults also would be, pick out something. Or no, here's a bottle of water. And then let's write for this for 3 minutes. So they would write for 3 minutes on the bottle of water. But the truth is, it was always about themselves. It was never about the bottle of water. And so then when you begin to start seeing that, then not only do you begin to see what character is, you also see what structure is. Because now the bottle is rigid and with the top is on there tightly. That's a person's character. That's maybe how they are fearful about writing their script, what the overriding emotion is at the time. So you get a lot of information when you think you're looking at something else.
Is that sometimes when we go to a museum and we look at art, whether we're critical of it or we're embracing of it, is we're really seeing ourselves?
Exactly. It's really interesting you should say that. I was thinking this morning, I went to a retrospective of David Hockney, and I was so wonderful. I happened to find the spot in all the galleries. You could stand in the one spot and you could see up and down every one of the galleries from this spot. So here was his his perspective is all the many portraits. Every one of them was of him. I mean, not even it was his dog or waves in the water. They all looked exactly like him. It was amazing to see that. So I asked the curator to take, that they should take the photograph of that standing right there, because the whole thing was really quite amazing.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I watched something on Alice Neal and all these different interviews that she gave, and most of them were just of people in her neighborhood. She was so fascinated by New York City at the time, and she was criticized a lot, and she was just totally okay with herself, and it showed in her art too. And I think that was just so refreshing to see someone that was unapologetic. She wasn't rude about it. She was just okay with who she was. And you talked about that earlier, just, how do we know what to write, and whether we're a team player or not, and just being okay, this is me, so there's nothing wrong with that.
A lot of criticism comes at people because the person who's criticizing hasn't done it. And so because they haven't done it, they are very angry at the person who has done it, who's made art, when they haven't. And if they haven't, then they would much more readily want to criticize somebody else than really understand they're criticizing themselves. Very angry at themselves for not making their own art. If you're at the computer and you're tense, you can't type with your hands that way. They're in a fist. You're not going to get much typing done. Step away. Always learn to let it go, let it go, let it go. It's interesting, the concept of letting go, because we might have an image in our idea, the career in Hollywood or whatever thing that you're thinking, and you have a whole scenario going on, but it's not real, it's not true. And just because you have it in place, that's causing it to not be able to be in place, to anything else be in place. Because you're rigid on, it's got to be this way. And humans are really interesting in this way. They have desires, and they know what they want, and they think they know how to get it. But they don't know how to get it because they would have it. And so the how to get it is the thing that has to be let go of. Because always it's there arranging itself. But if you're in the way, you mess with the good arrangements. You're supposed to meet that funny character guy that's in the alley, at 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever, because he's a stand-up comic and he's got an idea for, what you're going to do in the movie and blah, 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 blah. But you don't know that. That looks like, that's wrong, that's bad, that's not going to work. So you mess with the mechanism of how you're going to get the thing that you so wish to get.
Is that similar to what, and I'm going to say his name wrong, forgive me, Makai, Krishnamurti, and I'm probably saying it incorrectly, flow? Is that okay, similar to that? Maybe it's more of a flow of a state that we go into. Because I see a theme and I love it, and it's about not forcing things.
No, don't force.
And I love that. It's very refreshing.
Yeah, don't ever force. Although, I will say, be fierce. Be fierce. But don't force.
How does that work?
Fierce is be in a state of faith, of knowing that it's going to do what it's going to do, knowing your part in it. Like, okay, you got to do this part. We'll do this part. All the the gods and the waves of energy that are going through the galaxies. They're all fine. They're all doing their job. You got to do yours, whatever that is. So you have to pay attention and know what that is. And it's a little thing, but you got to keep up. You got to keep at it to do your part. You have to be fierce.
Fierce, but then flowing.
Fierce and flowing.
I like that.
Because it takes being brave. I love your film courage. Love that. Love that. That's beautiful. It takes film courage to do all of this. And that's why you've been so successful at this. It's wonderful. You've created so much content that has so much value for people. And also the opportunity for them to, to postpone working because there's so much rich material that they can look at. But, you know, and so many people with their hearts in the right place, where they're really smart and really able to give a lot of good information, and then people can, oh, look at all that really. And so it enriches people. That's a beautiful thing. And so didn't that take fierceness on your part to continue to go on and do it and do it and do it and do it and have faith and keep going and to be clear about what it is that you want to do and do it?
Right, and a curiosity.
Curiosity, absolutely. All the things, you know, it's a full-time job to be in your conscious state of creating.
I like it. Wow, that's good.
And then a nap.
Well, but then in a nap, though, you might go into alpha.
Right, or like the man at the pool. You know, he was hovering up there someplace.
But what state is that in? That's REM sleep?
That's drone.
Okay. What is the inner movie method?
Oh, the inner movie method is what we've been talking about, really. It's the movie that's in your heart. And just the conversation between you and you to allow it to come out of your heart and onto the page. And, you know, understanding things like if you're getting your cart before your horse, which is a lot of times humans have, you know, where you're not going anyplace. And why aren't you going anyplace? Because you've flipped it. You're moving, you're pulling at it instead of allowing it to emerge. So that's what the inner movement method is.
What's an example of cart before the horse? Let's suppose I've written something and you've looked at it and you can tell that about what I've written.
Well, as you were saying, like before you've created the movie, if you're thinking of the Q&A at the theater and that people are going to criticize you, well, that would be definitely cart before the horse, because now it's a standstill. Because, well, why should I create it if I'm going to go to the theater and be criticized? And you're right, that wouldn't work. So then do it the other way. Allow the horse to flow, get really excited about it, really understand that it's a beautiful thing and that people come and they will respond to it in a beautiful way. And maybe there'll be a couple that will be critical, and that's okay because you know that it's a beautiful thing.
So again, going back to flow, have you ever found yourself rigid, or has flow been sort of your makeup?
Yeah, I think everybody, what do I want to say about that?
Because some people pride themselves, sorry to interrupt, on being rigid, and it's very much part of the discipline that's in them.
Yeah, everybody's got their way. Like I have one client who, he calls me and he says, I'm vacuuming. That means that he's about to go in, deep and not come out of the house for weeks because he's writing something, whatever, a novel or a script. And that's his way of doing it. He prepares, gets ready for it. And one I have who goes to the doctor, makes sure he's okay. And then he, sort of disappears. He's got a beautiful country cabin house, and he's gone. He's gone over there. Nobody can contact him. So everybody's got their method. One I know turns the clock to the wall so that they can focus. It seems like, there's this focus thing that people want to commit to and do.
Yeah, because it's interesting with the vacuuming, they say, a lot of times we procrastinate and say, well, let me just dust this one corner right there. It's bothering me. Is that part of it so that there's no more excuses? The vacuuming's done. There's no little lint on the ground that you're going to have to pick
I think
up.
that you do it like I know I was doing my taxes this weekend. For me, it's got to be, you know, the pile, and then you get in, and then you do the numbers, and then you file it on the thing, and then I have to kind of move into the wholeness of it. I have to see the whole year in terms of everything. And, you know, people have a hard time with the taxes, not because it's taxes or it's numbers. It's because you're looking at your year and all the things that occurred and how much did it take you in your energy to make that money, and, you know, and how much did you make, and now, you know, you're wanting to make a lot all year, but now you're hoping that it's a smaller number because it's tax time. You know, there's all kind of things that show up. So you're getting like a wholeness impression of the thing. And then when you're ready, boom, you know, you commit and go in.
Right, you're really looking at your life.
Right.
You know?
So the dusting part or the sharpening pencils or whatever the thing is, they're all an act of you continuing to be at one as your inner movie, as you know, to get that connectivity. And when you do, then you know you've got it. Then you go.
What does it mean to write from the heart?
It's the truth. It's the truth. So you're not really writing anything that's not true. So you learn something too. You learn about your heart. What's on your heart's mind. What you want, what you need, what you hope for. It's a wonderful process individually, let alone if you're going to, you know, be an international film. It's you know, it's personal to you too.
We've talked before about people having this conversation with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Have you met people that there's just no conversation? You've got to get that started. They've got to get to know who they are.
Not really. You know, everybody has their own method and their own genre. You know, if you're going to write Go Ahead, Make My Day, you know, Clint Eastwood kind of film, that's a different relationship that somebody would have to their heart, to themselves, than somebody who would write, you know, like Field of Dreams. It's just, you know, everybody's got a different method, and they got a different way, and they got a different script at the end of that thing.
Okay, so everybody has some type of dialogue with themselves, but they're just different types of dialogue.
Right, and then you lead with certain things. Like some people are absolute structure, and others are dialogue, and so then that's good partnerships. You know, when the people who can structure and the people who can dialogue get together, and also somebody who types.
That's good too.
That works, yeah. Mm-hmm.
How does a movie get from the heart to the page?
Well, not always easily. Yeah, you just have to keep going. You know, I don't have a good answer for that in terms of that's it's different for everyone. You know, to get it out, and you want it to be different. You don't want to enforce a particular style on somebody that it doesn't fit. You know, however way it can merge out of them. I have in my book the embracing the impossible obstacles, and for a lot of screenwriters, that's it. They don't have to know how to write the movie. They need to know, you know, what are they going to say to their spouse when they can't come to bed, or what, you know, how to, you know, what kind of hypochondria are they going to come up with? There's all kinds of ways, subterfuge that screenwriters have. They're very clever, very clever. Sometimes it's just quelling all those things, and then the writing is no longer an obstacle. So then they can take care of that naturally.
And is that how a writer's head gets in the way of the heart? Is coming up with these obstacles? Or there's other things too that are character driven? The mind is affecting the heart when the the person's supposed to be writing from the heart, but the mind is now getting in the way, and that's the hypochondria, or, well, you know, my spouse will be mad if I don't do this.
Yeah, well, all of those things are part of the story. I mean, they come up because those are the problems that the character is having, even though it's Superman, you know. It's like, oh, you know, my cape got stuck in the telephone booth. Now what am I going to do? You know, and so what does that really mean? It really means that his power is being usurped, you know. So the things come up, and they come up in just really human ways and annoying, pesky ways, so that you are getting the agenda. You know what's interesting is people will call when they have anxiety about the writing. But the truth is, don't get rid of the anxiety to write. The character is in anxiety. Right from that, you know, your whole body is conjuring up the very feelings that you need to be writing about. But most writers think, oh, I have to let this go. I have to not be anxious, and then I can write it. No, write it from the arena of that, from the environment of having all the anxiety, because, you know, it's authentic to you.
Okay, so add Lois Lane. Are you listening to me?
Right.
Okay.
You never listen. You know,
Right,
you're always
okay.
baking. Why are you baking? You know?
Okay, so incorporate that into the story.
Because those are the elements that are authentic to the character and what the character is going through at that time.
How does a writer's age affect what they want to write?
Oh, because we are at every age and stage of our life, we're that age. It's a specific stage and age, each age. It's remarkable. In fact, that's what my book now, my autobiography is, every stage of every age. So people can look up their own age and be illuminated by what's going on for them in their life, even though my life is completely different from theirs. There's always that particular chronology at that time for all of us.
But you know, we often look back on our younger years with a fondness and maybe a melancholy. And a lot of people love, let's say, YA, and they want to become, you know, a lot of adult readership is in YA. So how do we explain wanting to write from that, maybe those preteen years or those college years where life was, you know, we could have gone this direction, but we chose this? Why is it that that's so interesting to us?
Well, because everybody in adulthood is from surviving to thriving. So we're wanting to change up from the surviving skills from early times. And then what we do is, you know, history repeats itself. So we recreate history in order to fix it, in order to change it, in order to, now that we're grown, we want a different result. And so then that's why everyone wants to go back, reset on the choo-choo on your track, you know, and then let me go forward in this other way. That's why they're doing that.
That's fascinating. Okay, so if someone, let's say, wants to be a YA writer, is that then shows that, you know, a lot of stuff is sort of stuck in the high school years?
Well, if they want to be a YA writer, they're going to be successful, because right now it's a very successful genre.
Sure, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it's interesting I've read some YA books and I'm loving them, and I didn't think, I just kind of wanted to browse it, and then it turned out I actually wanted to become invested in the story.
So why did you want to become invested in the story?
The one that I'm thinking of is Rainbow Rowell's book, The Girl Goes to College, and she's a fish out of water. She doesn't really fit in. I think she's more from a working class background, and for some reason either she got a scholarship or her dad was able to afford going there, and her roommate doesn't care about anything and she cares about everything. So it's an interesting mixture of these two, one that overthinks everything and the other roommate who could care less about it, just throws clothes on the floor and everything just kind of comes easy to her, and she's actually kind of bored with life. So I found the contrast between the two characters very interesting. and I love the protagonist. And again, just thought I would flip through it and saw it on Goodreads. People were praising it.
So what that is that's the imposter syndrome, where does she belong? And as you say, fish out of water. That's a crucial time in development of young adults is who am I? What's my identity? And my identity comes short. I'm fish out of water. Instead of, I'm fish out of water. And so then it requires that the person explore their identity and then become satisfied with it and accept it. And they're up against the contrast of it, which is the one who is sloppy about it and is entitled and throws it away. Where this one, if she had that, it would be precious to her. So, that's what is displayed in a young adult feeling. And, that's the stage and phase of the age that happens. And so then everybody at that age wants to read that. They're curious about that. And people later want to read it because they're at different stages and phases of identity where they want to then go back and explore, well, what happened there so that I can now establish what my identity is now? And have I? And oops, did I not think of it then? So there's all that, the road not taken. There's a lot of, that happens along the way. With men, there's like a 20-year-old road and then the 50-year-old road. Like maybe somebody who became a dentist and he finds himself at 50, did I, I wasn't the poet. I wanted to be the poet when I was 20, you see. So it's road not taken. So all along the age frames, there's always something that comes up in terms of what you want to explore.
Can we talk about the different stories we want to tell at different ages in our life?
Yeah, sure. What did you want to? Was there a particular?
Well, let's say okay. So at 20, you said you wanted to write this autobiography.
Yes.
About your life.
Yes, and the idea was I like the quote from Archimedes, a place to stand on a lever long enough and you can lift the world. And so my plan was, okay, I'm going to go to Hollywood. I'm going to write this and put it out from every age so that from there I can do my service from there. In other words, I can be of help. I can, that would be the place to kick off from. And then then the book told me, actually it was the book that told me, excuse me, but you're writing this your whole life and you have to live until you're 80 or more, to do this. Oh, well, I don't mind writing it my whole life, but that means I have to live that long. And so I have, and I'm at the other end now, and it's done, and it's coming out. Yeah. So it's, but along the way, of course, I still got to do my service and have my platform. And the other book, it's just amazing how that came forward. There's one of those things. I had no plan on that. I didn't know that was going to be. I had another bigger plan, something else. But no, it happened how it did because then I did have my platform, and I have been. It's just been wonderful to be a really, really good help to people, and it's thrilling to work on films, to be the oracle. I mean, that's great. Go in and it's like all the characters are the people who are on the set to me, and working with everybody. It's a beautiful thing to do.
Right. What is the John Lennon quote? Life is what happens while you're making other plans.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you had this plan for this autobiography. You're in this elevator. I love this story. And then life comes along because you were and this was
shows up, and I had no idea. I mean, look I was going for an agent and a publisher, and I from a book that I knew it was going to take another 50 years to write. but what was I thinking? I just thought I wanted to open, publishing for me, and boom, I did. And, the enormity of what has happened from that book is just astonishing for all these years. Amazing.
So you say at different points of our lives we want to write different stories. So let's say, so if we go 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 maybe, what type of stories at each decade does a writer usually focus on?
Well, in 20s, I have stories in my book about, like leaving high school. What are you going to do in the wider world, The real life is always going on, but you don't think that's right. You think high school and graduation, and then what? So there's that, that concern. And then there's, then how you're going to make it in college. You're talking about the girl who's fish out of water. That's one of the stories. There's a lot of identity stories in those early 20s. And as you progress through 20, you start to find particular channels of where you're going to find yourself. Like, is it New York or Los Angeles? What are some decisions you start making, or, take it down to something more specific for you. People get married then. They might have babies. Those are destiny choices, so that they really color the differences, that are happening throughout your life. In 30s, in my instance, I was still working to break through in Hollywood at 30. And so I had a lot of, those determination stories. And they're wonderful stories, in really early 30s. And then I did break through. And what that felt like, the whole difference of that. And then when you get to 40, there's that, you're no longer getting there, you're being there. And so you have to know the difference. And you have to start living the being there instead of the getting there. Because if you keep living the getting there, you'll never be there. It's a real progression that you have to do. And I have a story in there about going back to my high school, going back to Chicago to do a lecture. And I went to my childhood neighborhood. And it's a beautiful relationship that you have between where you've landed, who you have become, and who you were intending to be. And going back to see if you could help that little kid out, but that little kid was just fine. And I knew that kid was going to be the becoming of myself. And you get these recollections. You begin to start seeing, how all that happens. And then through 50s is that I have a story in there about going to a Hollywood party, with the Klieg lights and everything. And I did get the food. I'm no fool. But then I left immediately, because what I wanted more than, I had no ambition anymore, because I have it. I got it. Everything was successful. And so, the thing I wanted most was to go home and make soup and put my pajamas on. But I couldn't be satisfied with soup and pajamas had I not come to the pinnacle of the full success. And then deeper success, about how you go to the Hollywood party on the beach, with the producer, and then that's where business is done. And that business is very high profile, very high end. And then you're in the rarefied air of the circle of producers and directors, and how you are counsel to those who can spin around and make things happen in power. And so that's really a wonderful phase. And in 50s also is the phase of what you can do to profit people in the world. We did a lot of waterworks, Pisces, water, and agriculture, and schools. So then there's a lot of charity that you can do, and that's that's a really there's something so strong about that. And then you progress from there. Then I had loved ones being, in sickness, and me being caregiver to them and all. So there's every aspect, everything along the way. And there was one in particular that when I was in my 20s, I came on a conference. And I was the new kid on the block in the conference. So they were all old guard people, and I came on, and I'm, just talking my talk, and suddenly something was happening. It's like, what is it? I could feel it in the air. It was sparking. It was sparking, and people were laughing and they were applauding, and it's like, what is this? And I realized I was being passed the baton. But the old guard didn't like that. They weren't going to pass me the baton, but the baton got passed. And I could feel it when I stepped off the stage. It was completely different than when I had stepped on the stage. And so then 20 years after that, when I was at the same conference, I saw a young woman, and I thought, it's time for her. And so I handed her a rock from the ground, and I said, this is for you if you get my meaning. And I hope she got the meaning, because then it belonged to her. So all the stages and phases along the way are just fascinating and wonderful. And there's one that I had about 5 years ago was the end of the New Soul program. In other words, you get to a place of mastery and expertise where you can do it with your eyes closed, and you've done it over and over and over again. And you could go around the wheel again, do it some more, but you can stop now. And when you stop, you lift up to the next levels. And that's a really beautiful stage and phase that people can get to, in their, maybe, if they're lucky, they're maybe in their 70s. And so then, more stages along the way.
Yeah, it's interesting when you go back to where you were raised, and how small everything looks.
Small, yeah. Like at the end, you mean the school was at the end of the block?
Or even just the size. I grew up in an apartment, and so I didn't go into the apartment because I didn't know the people, but to see the complex from an adult's perspective, I'm like, this place was tiny. I thought it was much bigger, and it's really an interesting look to go back. If some people grow up and they stay in the area, but if you haven't been back, or with Google Maps, you can just kind of try to see it, but it's real powerful.
It is powerful, and you get to meet that child, and you can, if that child needs help, you can help that child now, because all time is simultaneous. So go back there and absolutely, by all means, if be of good love to that child, so that it can then become you.
One of the topics that you've talked about is the Healing the Hollywood Heart, why you want to be rich and famous and what to do about it. So this was a course or a group that you had?
It started out as a seminar, and then it was wildly successful for a lot of people because Hollywood is hard. And there were people who wanted to get into it, people who wanted to get up through it, and other people wanted to get out of it. So I had a lot of clientele to be able to be in there. It was a wonderful experience, yeah.
Yeah, so many questions. First off, what did you see was the main reason that people wanted to be rich and famous? What was behind that?
Usually it's the healing of your core wound You wouldn't articulate it that way, but you come to Hollywood for some reason. You know, like you're saying, the young girl who was a fish out of water and went to college. So that's her becoming. That's her, like, that's the dilemma that she's got to break through, to grow up. So everybody's got their breakthrough thing to grow up. Everybody has a brick wall that they've got in front of them. Even not in Hollywood, you know, every place else. And so that's what they're up against. And that's what's interesting about being a human being. You know, that's the thing that you want to mature yourself up through.
Why do you think people choose Hollywood, though? Of all places, they could want to go to Silicon Valley. They
do.
Yeah, and that's its own beast there.
Right.
There's all sorts of challenges with that and
Right.
rewards. But why Hollywood? Why do you think it draws certain types of people?
Well, a lot, as I was telling you about the subgroup of men that I would have around 35 years old, and that was looking for dad. And there's, you know, it's a very clear authority state in Hollywood. And, you know, oh, if you can only get through, if only you can break through, and it's hard, it's really hard. Sports, hard, gotta, you know, it's just so hard. And that's what's interesting about it. You know, if it wasn't hard, then how would you know that you triumphed?
Have you ever talked anyone out of wanting to be rich and famous, or no? It was never. It was never where you don't really want that. It was just exploring.
I would always say if you can. There's a bumper sticker called "Just Say No to Hollywood," you know, and in the copy of my brochure, I said, if you can do that, say no, and go. You know, turn your U-Haul around and go back home. And get a job at the bus-out department of Sears. Don't, you know, if you can say no, say no. But if you can't, if it's burning in you, if you must, if you know that you've got to, well, that's wonderful. That's what you want in your life, to be able to have that kind of, you know, gratitude, that passion, that desire to break through. See what I'm saying? It's always a becoming story.
And then there are those, I'm sure, that maybe regretted. I don't know if you could regret the rich part. Maybe they had, but the famous part, I'm sure there's so many things that go along with that. We don't realize it, but
you don't want fame. But it's interesting about fame in our society, which is when people see that you are famous, they think you are successful, and they think that fame is making you happy. None of that is true. With fame, what you get sometimes is leverage, where you're able to do more projects, or or be able to have access more so. But that's it. That's what fame is. It's quite difficult actually for people.
Why? Why is that?
Because it's a persona beside themselves. It doesn't have anything to do with your humanness, and like eating a hot dog with your mouth open and somebody taking a picture of you. It's not personal to you, and it can be really horrendous.
And then last but not least, those that didn't achieve what they wanted, and either out of financial reasons or just they were just bitter toward Hollywood, wanted to leave. I've had it. This is a town of narcissists. I can't be here anymore, whether that's true or not. Did you see those people that had it and they were throwing their hat in the ring? And...
Well, sure, it's heartbreaking, and some, it's triumphed for them. When they finally can't, they're done. It's kind of like done as a disease, as a thing that you're caught in too. A lot of times it's very difficult to give up something that you can't complete. Just plain that. It's like you'd like to couldn't I just finish on a high note, and then then go. So it's there's always evolution for everybody. And if evolution can sometimes mean that you leave, walk away, or But it's interesting because I would get a lot of people who were lawyers and wanted to leave lawyering, and come into Hollywood, as screenwriters, because they hate lawyering, or doctors. Though I have a lot of doctors, and then with Sopranos, the mafia guy used my book, as if Hollywood is easier than the mafia, which I don't think.
Well, there's favors that need to be done, and you don't play in this playground without me saying so. That kind of attitude. So I'm sure there's some parallels. But did you see those that, quote, gave up and then they actually had success?
Always. The thing when I think John Lithgow, he had it. His heart was breaking. He had great success, but it wasn't happening anymore. And that's it. He's leaving, and as he's going out of town, they were trying to locate him for the World According to Garp.
Oh,
and
wow.
And they brought him back in, and he's been here since and been very successful. And it's not one person; it's constantly. And in life, as you know, you just don't give up. You just keep going, and something will occur for you. Something will occur, and that's for everybody. So, it happens all the time.
Do you think that's luck or an energy shift?
A lot of times it's an energy shift. Just when you let go, just as I was saying before, the idea of we think we know how to get the thing. We don't know how to get the thing. Because if we knew how to get the thing, we'd have it. We don't have it. Therefore, we know what the thing is. We know we want it. We have to let all the aspects come into place that we don't know about to get the thing gotten. And that is there, where there's the element of like when you give it up, like, oh, I've had it, I'm not going to do this anymore. Then it turns around on you. And that happens like in relationships with people. It's like when say a woman is chasing after a man, and he's not, he's not interested at all until she stops, turns around, goes in the other direction, and he'll go, right after her. So there is element of just the energy. There's all kinds of mystical reasons why anything happens or doesn't happen.
Something else I believe you've said is money issues are never really about money.
No, they're always about love, always. So that, like say for instance, a son knows that his father was never successful, and could never make a go of any business. So then you'll see the son unable to surpass his father, because his relationship with his father is love. He loves him very much and wants so for his father to succeed, but trying to have his father succeed makes the son fail. So it's connected to the love, it's not connected to the money. Money's happy to come at you all the time, but you have to know how to have a good full stream in relationship to love.
But what if someone says, just when I'm about to get ahead, I'm hit with all these bills. Mm-hmm. And so I have love in my heart. It's that I don't make enough to keep up with rising prices.
So if the belief system is that the person doesn't make enough to keep up with rising prices, then therefore they will not keep up with rising prices. So that's their belief system. So now that belief system might have come from mom or dad. There's a lot of phrases, like, oh, well, money doesn't grow on trees. You can't have that toy. That you better learn how to fend for yourself. There's all kind of phrases that are brought into people's belief systems, and then that's what they believe. But whatever is going on in your relationship to money, you look at that and look that there is a belief about that, and it's anchored in a love, a belief.
And then the flip side, what about people that come from abundance, but somehow they still have money troubles?
Yeah, because it's love. You know, like say for instance, their father was very wealthy, but he wasn't home because he was bringing home the bacon, and so he wasn't home to give them time, but he would buy things for them. So then they would be in abundant financially, but they would be hollowed out. You know, feel a sadness about that they weren't loved. So it's always the money, the love component that has to do in relationship to money, and it's never about money. It never, you know, like, oh well, if you have this job, you'll make this amount of money, and then you'll be fine. Only if you believe that that's true.
So then maybe somebody that did come from abundance and they're not doing well financially, is it that they view money as evil? And
Could, yeah. Everybody's got their individual way of carving this thing out, but it's always a love relationship with money. And you know, look, just simple things like look at money in your wallet. Is it all scrunched up and stuffed in there, or do you have it folded nicely and all the president's heads are going in the same direction? You know, be respectful of money, because money wants to come to you, but if you don't treat it right, if you, the minute it comes in, if you conjure up bills to pay and it goes out again, well, really, is that what you want, you know, in your relationship to money? You wouldn't want that kind of relationship with a human being, would you? No. So you want to, you know, you want to be mindful of that.
what is the inner money method?
The inner money method is same as, which is what I'm saying is, money is always about love. And so you want to be mindful of your relationship with money and have it really be clear, real clean. Like, you know, tell money what you want it for, and it'll come to you in that clear way. If you put a lot of stipulation on it or confusion around it, it's a little more difficult energetically to, you know, move around and come into your hands. So that's a very popular seminar that I did. You know, a lot of people would want to come to that because they felt like they had, you know, big money issues.
Well, you know, from, you know, growing up, maybe not from the wealthy side, and also seeing a lot of people in that situation, I know there's a learned helplessness that if you grow up at a certain, you know, income level, it feels like it's almost like something that you see the world through. And so I find that interesting because it's hard to break out of that.
It is. It's very hard to break out of that. And that's all, everything is perception. And so as you change your mind about how things are that you don't prefer to have, then that's when they change. Change your mind, change your whole life. It's that simple. And it's that difficult because it's just a belief. And if you keep carrying on in a belief, and you'll see what your beliefs are by looking to see the results that are coming in your life. And so you know, tackle each belief, you know, as you come. It's interesting. And then you'll see that you find it in your body. You find it where you will hold constraints. Maybe your father took your piggy bank when you were a kid, you know, and that was going to be for your bicycle, and you were saving and you were conscientious, and then he blew the whole thing. Then what does that do to your resolve about your bicycle? Things like that are, you know, that change your whole perception of how you deal with money as an adult as a result of one event that occurred when you were maybe 8 years old.
Also, too, it seems like this generation, or maybe just the time we're in now, post-pandemic, post-recession, that the 80s sort of greed is good is viewed in a very bad light. And so now we're in this new age of you know, sort of we all should be at the same level. And it's just interesting that it seems like without getting too political, it's almost considered bad to have money. That somehow you've cheated the system in some sense.
Oh, well, but that's an attitude that if somebody has that attitude, they probably don't have money.
Sure, sure.
So, that shows your very belief system is the thing that's causing the result in your life that you don't like to have. So change it. You have the power to completely, renovate that belief.
How do we have a conversation either with ourselves or with money and try to change it? What does that look like?
So what's interesting about that is we think we aren't talking to money now, but that's not true. Because, for instance, if you would say, oh, people are greedy who have money, and how dare they, and they're evil or whatever they are. Well, you're having a conversation with money. So that's the one you want to change.
And so maybe change it to just because having money, just because someone has money doesn't make them bad. They can do good things with it too. They can give to charities and plant trees. I don't know, just do things.
Well,
with
see,
it.
for you, a belief is that good things should be done with money. Maybe somebody else is like, well, you don't have to do anything with your money, good
That's
or
true.
bad.
That's true.
Or somebody else might have a thing that's like, oh, I'm going to do bad with them, whatever. But recognize your own belief system, and then you can say, oh, if I believe that good should be done with money, then I better get a lot of it, because I want to do a lot of good. So do you see the difference? That's a good conversation with money, because then money says, well, okay then, I'll be coming around.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. And even if someone says, I just want to get my nails done and I want to have nice things and a nice car and I don't care about any of that, it doesn't matter. There's no judgment. Money's not judging you.
No.
And saying, well, you're selfish, so you don't get to have it.
But see, if you have a heavy-duty, selfish component in relationship to money, look at that one, because then that's keeping you from money. That's costing. That's shame money.
Oh, interesting.
Really? Did you want shame money? Not really. You'd rather have that money. Let's say you've got the equivalent of $500 million in shame money. You could do something else with $500 million. Might be kind of interesting to do something else.
Yeah. I never heard that term. I like that.
So recently, it's just wonderful. I have some clients, they're all over the world actually, and we're doing regenerative agriculture. And it's a beautiful thing, because there's new relationships to money now in terms of what we can do that, like on a grassroots level, where people can contribute just, their tens of dollars and not much. And in those donations, well, they're not donations, they're investments. In those investments, then the whole world can prosper by clearing up the environments of the agriculture and doing regenerative, rewilding, naturalizing the ecosystems back into nature. And that's utilizing the money system in order to be able to do that, to be able to nurture and to, re-nature the world. That's very powerful objectives for money, where it's not like, oh, good, I get to buy more plastic. Maybe we don't need to do that anymore, but we can put money where it really makes a positive, response to the environment. So that's what's going on now too. So that's good.
What if an artist, writer, filmmaker, actor says, life just happens to me. I feel like I don't have a say in how my life is going. We see this in our comments. We see that, I don't have time to be creative. Different things are happening to me, and I feel like I'm sort of at the mercy of fate.
Well, no. Don't do that to yourself. You know what's interesting? I was in a restaurant in Malibu, And the waitress, well, she was all in a dither because she was trying to rehearse for her audition. She was an actress, you know. And so, of course, she couldn't serve. She couldn't be the waitress because she was being the actress. Well, she was supposed to be the waitress, but she was the actress. And so I had to sit her down, you know, and say, look, sweetie, you know, if you want to be a really, really good actress, be a really good waitress. And if you can't, then leave right now. Because what she was doing was she was confounding herself. She was making important the fact that she was an out-of-work actor, but she was an in-work waitress. You know, you have to do the job that you've got because that's what you get the Oscar for. And if she can't be that, you know, the only reason she was being a waitress was because she was an out-of-work actor. That was the persona she was carrying on about, because that was the one that she identified with, and that was important to her. But that doesn't work. You can't do it that way. You have to do the job of the thing to get the job. You know, it's like if you really, really, really want to be not an out-of-work actor, but a working actor, then do the waitress job.
How did you know this about her?
Well, she was, you know, all a flitter and
She told you?
practicing her sides and not bringing the French fries, you know.
So did she let you know that, you know, she was up for this part, or?
Well, I mean, it was completely obvious because she was, you know, emoting to everybody because she was spreading all over the identity of her being out of work as an actor.
Oh, okay.
See, so if you want to make art, the way that you make art is that you have to have really solid this idea about how to be a human. Get that solid so that you know to put your socks on when it's snowing outside. You know, you got to be really solid with that. And then touch the face of God. That's your art. And you have to have the two going on simultaneously. That's the why it's art, is because it's both things. And they require the two different aspects of ourselves.
Hence the two faces.
Yes.
And what does that mean, to touch the face of God?
It means that you have gotten your spark of your genius, your expression, your thing that you came here to offer in the world, that you put that through here. And that's what we want as artists. We want to bring that spark that we brought with us to contribute. That's what we want, to contribute. And the way we do that is that we have to be very solid about being a human too.
And what if our idea of God is unknown to us?
Well, then that's what you're finding out. You know, you're reaching for the essence of yourself, the very life force that is you. That's the thing you want to bring forth and offer to the world.
So it doesn't mean we're godless. It just means we're trying to figure out what's inside of us sort of moving us.
Well, you know, when you're saying that people are saying that their life is moving along without them, that if it's moving along without you, why? Why are you doing that? Because you are at the center of your life, and you have complete say-so as who you are, what you're experiencing in this world. And if it's not you that's governing that, who is? And why are you letting that happen? And in a lot of ways, sometimes it's because they might feel, unable to cope with, it's overwhelming. You know, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do. How would all of that? And that's what to do. What to do is to find out what to do.
You mentioned earlier that you went to a David Hockney retrospective, and you were at this point where you could see all of his work from different points in the hall. Do you think he was trying to get closer to God?
Well, he surely knew how to paint waves in a pool. Yeah.
What do you think someone like that who's so prolific, you said mostly images of himself?
Well, I mean, they were images of, they were all portraits of other people, but they all looked exactly like him.
Ah, I see. So he really saw himself. That's again going back to this water bottle. When you said like write about something,
Yeah.
I'm just going to put it in an inanimate object and then we write about it. It's trying to get us out of ourselves because we're naturally going to see us in everything that we look
You're
at.
going to see yourself in everything, yeah. Oh, I mean, the Mona Lisa. Who do you think that looks like?
Right, just a male version. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Obstacles are only there if you want to stop.
Yes.
Can you talk about this?
Well, why else? They're only there, if and a lot of times you might want to stop, and that's okay, and that's good to reassess, and get a grip and think, now, am I going about this in the way I want to, or do I really want this, or let me adjust, let me realign. Those are always, very good opportunities for you to decide. But as far as obstacles are concerned, when you have them and you look at them and you don't want to stop with them, then don't. Just keep going.
So do you think they're obstacles or something we put up either
Yeah.
when we just are tired of something, or don't you think that times we really feel that those obstacles are there?
Of course. Of course. People feel profoundly when there's an obstacle, but that doesn't mean to stop.
Well, we talked about how in this group that you did about people wanting to become wealthy and famous, that oftentimes they would have success once they gave up. Mm-hmm. And were they putting obstacles, do you think, in their ways?
Well, everybody puts obstacles in their way, sure. Do you remember that game when we were kids? And it was, I remember the rules of it, but it was like I think it was like a milk bottle, and then you would put a lager in the thing. But nobody said that you had to stand way far away to try to do it. It was just, you could walk right up to it and put the thing in there. But that was part of the game. It was like, oh, they didn't know, because they were assuming that they had to do it from far away to try to get it into the bottle. So there's obstacles for you. When they're there, they show you, did I make some rules up to this game that aren't really necessary? Could I have done this another way? This have been easier? Could this have been a sure thing? So all those things are available to us when we're looking at the obstacles, rather than looking at the obstacles so that we stop. But if you want to stop, go right ahead.
You say feel it in your heart and have it in your life?
Yeah, I wrote a book called Feelization, and the technique is that how we manifest is we do feel it, and then we create it physically in the world. But we don't consciously necessarily know that. But I remember like a little kid, I was there at Christmas time, and she opened a package and she said, I wanted it and I got it. And that's it. It's like, you want it, figure it out, create it, and then have it. And then as you have it, it materializes in your life. And that's how we all materialize. We just don't necessarily make it conscious that we do it that way.
And just so with the book that you pitched some years ago, you still got it to materialize. It was
Right.
just several years
Decades.
later, decades later.
And as it should have been, yeah. And it's done, and that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to have something finished like that.
Yeah, something that you spent your whole life basically working toward.
Yeah.
You say whatever you're doing, you're not doing it for.
Whatever you're doing, you're doing for a very good reason.
Okay.
Whatever it is, or whatever you're not doing for a very good reason.
So if someone says, my agent is not sending me out on auditions.
But they won't. That's not what an agent's job is. Your agent is your partner, and you work together to develop your I don't like that word career, but your life work. Develop that together, and work together to strategize and to see how you can materialize any jobs. And if that's not working between the two of you, then that's one that you need to change up to something else.
Okay, how about, I've pitched several screenplays and I've entered them in numerous competitions, and now I'm just spending too much money on it, and I'm getting a pass, I'm getting notes back. No one's understanding my work.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking, of course. I'm not a fan of these competitions. It's the word. You want to compete against somebody else who's also struggling with theirs, and they care so much about it. I don't know, you're putting yourself up for judgment, and then they have to pay for it. I'm not a fan of all of that, but, if that's what somebody wants to do, certainly. But it's a go nowhere. I think it's a kind of a go nowhere prospect.
Well, maybe it could get you in front of some important people to greenlight your next project. Or...
Okay, if you want to, whatever works for. To me, everybody, to each his own in terms of what it feels like to them. But to me, it feels like you're putting yourself into a lowly position. Like you're in a non-powerful position. It just feels like it's demeaning. That's just my idea of it, because I see a lot of heartbreak, and I don't like to see that people work hard and then they're rejected.
Going back to, if you feel it in your heart, you can have it in your life. Suppose you're in a dark place.
You'll have dark then in your life, yeah. If you're feeling bad, then that's what conjures up, So you have to you have to shift. You have to, and it's something small, you just feel better. Wash your hands lavishly in lather and warm water, Try to put a little water behind your neck. Do something to, in some way, shift your mood, and see if it's possible for you to give choices to yourself to make yourself feel better. And because then when you're in a place of feeling good, then it's much easier to create other possibilities. You can't really create from sadness or heaviness.
Yeah, I saw something the other day that it said, have you had some water today? Have you gone outside for at least 15 minutes? Have you stretched? Have you had something nutritious? There were things that, they seem simple, but then you're like, oh, you know what? Actually, I don't think I've stepped outside today. Yeah. Or have you...
So I was on a call, and what's interesting is, I asked this woman, did you, when was the last time you ate? She didn't remember. And we found out that her feet were cold. I said, could you put socks on? Let's just go, there's something about socks. Socks are fabulous. They're so comfortable. And, could we just get to the socks and put them on? Because she was in the state of that the world is going to drop dead. The world is blowing up. But what she was feeling was that she was going to blow up, that she was going to drop dead. And so she likened that onto the whole wide world. And when you're in that state of depression, that's where you go, So if you can do something really fundamental, like just shift the mood in any way, take a deep breath, any little countenance that is just you, And you can do that because you are that powerful. You have the power to change anything in your, take one breath, you have the power to do that. And so then that's where you begin to start seeing that no, you're not powerless about all outside circumstances. You're powerful about every internal circumstance.
What is a junk job?
The one that the day job that you don't want because you want the good job, the real job, the job, that's a junk job. Yeah.
I often see people online, oh, well, then you're going to have to go back to that real job. But so much of doing anything creative, there's also administrative tasks to it. There's a lot of stuff that's grunt work within that. Mm-hmm. And it's just like doing data entry at a, quote, junk job, which I've had plenty of. But there's a lot of components that are very similar. It's not always where you get to just, fluttering around and there's a lot of stuff that you have to tie up loose ends. So.
Well, that's what I was saying before around knowing how to be a human being and then reaching for your essence of, in the galaxy someplace. That combination, that's what's so delicious about being here on Earth, is that we've got that twosie going on, between the two aspects of ourselves. And yeah, you can learn a lot from a junk job in terms of, the politics and the dynamics of the group and the thing and all that. This is interesting. I didn't have a junk job, but I had a research time that I was at a bank in Beverly Hills that I was doing research for a movie of the week in the bank. And it was so fascinating to see that the head of the bank was so smart. He recognized and acknowledged everybody in the bank so that when it was the teller's birthday, he'd get everybody down to sing while the customers are there, and she was acknowledged in front of everybody. So powerful. And so it was really interesting to be there. I was there for maybe 10 days or so, to just get the whole nature of the bank. And I put him into the film because that was an unusual that was an unusual CEO. And he was very successful, the response that he got from his team from that. But so you can always learn something from these junk jobs, but I suggest you leave after 10 days.
Well, but what do you say about those that having a junk job actually makes their art stronger, whatever it is?
Yeah, you can, whatever works out for you in whatever way you can do it, then do that. Yeah, certainly. I mean, for a while, I used Hollywood as my junk job to write my autobiography. I mean, because it was fun. I was self-funding it, and so I was self-funding it from Hollywood. And all my work that I was doing there is, I was like an oracle on films and all, and that, that was, that would be considered like the big deal job, but really it was supporting other writing.
What does that mean, an oracle on the job?
I would come in on the jobs from the launch, from the inception of the idea to the launch, all the way through the making of the film. And so it would be like all the people that were doing the film would be like the characters that I was working with. This was very fascinating. It was really interesting to be able to do that. They would call me in when it would be raining on scene 52. What are we going to do? And then it would be raining on scene 52. And then I was able to say, and then we would move on from there. As aside from this is that to the man, every director that I worked with, somewhere at 3 a.m. in the morning when it's 12 below zero and we weren't getting the shot, every director would say to me, "I'm having the time of my life." Because there's nothing like it really. To be creating, involving at that level of films. It's exhilarating, and it's you learn so much every time, and it's just thrilling.
Well, and problem solving too.
Problem solving, and you've got to, there's always just a terrible crisis, and then you solve it.
Right, there's a charge you get from that. Yeah. How do we know if a job is right for us?
Well, do you like it? Does it feel good? Are you happy?
Well, I think that in a prior interview, you had something interesting you said. You said that somebody didn't like their job and they were a positive person and they felt that their job was sort of a negative place. And then you realized that maybe their job was to be this ray of light.
Right.
And they were there for a reason. I thought
Yeah.
that was fascinating.
Yeah. If you are that, that's what you're learning to develop more so. That you are the bright light in the dreary place.
And when should we stay at a job and when should we leave?
Well, I think both. I think you stay and you leave. And and a lot of times you will leave way before you leave.
Right, right.
Because you conjure up still what you needed to be for you so that it works for you before you leave. Sometimes you can't. It's like you got a big plan. I'm going to stay until July. You can't make it through March. And so then you go. And it's sudden and it's out of the plan. So you want to just follow your heart in the way that it's best to follow your heart and be to your good advantage to do it.
And as creative people, what's the best way to leave a job? How do we do it with grace? As creative people, usually we've probably already checked out of the job maybe a year or two before we actually leave, or maybe not. But how do we do it with grace so that we leave and we give our 2 weeks or we don't?
I think it's with the people. I think it's the relationship with the people. Because just because you can't stand a job, there might be people there that mean something to you and that you'd want to say a good goodbye to. You don't want to just, abandon the thing. You want to tie up all the loose ends of relationally with everybody, and that'll make you feel better. But a lot of times it's like, for instance, if you've got a untenable relationship with your boss, look at that one because you're working out your dad, and then don't leave until you've worked out your dad, and then you might not have to leave because this guy is, not triggering you anymore.
Sure. We give him a big bear hug. Pat him on the
Maybe
back.
you wouldn't get that far, but
Okay. But I mean,
you look at him and you think, nothing. This is nothing.
Sure.
And then then you can leave because you don't have to.
Or if you actually don't need the job anymore, you also see too that your energy around the job is different. Mm-hmm. And things don't matter as much that mm-hmm. maybe would bother you if you really needed it. Yeah. And that changes things too.
Yeah, it's all, it's completely individual to each person. It's not one that we can say, well, this is the rule here and this is the rule here. It's that you follow your story of all these things are here for you, not being given, not to you. It's not taking from you. It's there for you. So when you see all that, then you progress in the best and highest way for you.
What do you say though to people that think that, okay, once I leave this place, I'm just going to be creating, when you realize that a lot of stuff can't be done in a vacuum and you actually are fed more creatively by being out in the world?
Well, the first thing you do when you quit your job is you fall asleep over your project. You think, oh yeah, I'm going to have this done by next week, and you're conked out. No, you're gone. It's because you rest. You need that rest. You need to take care of it, and then you have to switch to now productive, because your story was, oh, I can't get anything done because I have this terrible job that I've got. Then the job is gone. Uh-oh. Now what? And then you want to be mindful. You don't want to watch. Don't get yourself to the ER or anything. Don't start creating other distractions in front of you. Let yourself live empty. Settle down, and then let the project come into you and get a different rhythm going. Because it is a different rhythm, when you're working for yourself instead of working for somebody else.
I like that. What does that mean, live empty?
Live empty. How are you, how do you really feel? Do you know how you feel? What's going on? What do you want to think about? What am I curious about? Do I really want to do this project? Is something else coming at me as something exciting? When you're empty, all those things can now start showing. You don't know what you're about without the job.
So it's kind of like a clean slate.
Yeah.
For anyone who's an artist thinking about quitting their job, what are just some fast and easy rules, aside from, do you have money to carry yourself? I think that's number one, and the last one too.
I don't think it's the money. I don't think that's the one, because if you're there just to make money, it's not worth it. It costs you too much for that money, if that's all you're there for. There's got to be some other something going on. And you have to be ready for the next stage of what your project is. It's interesting, when I went to Europe and I was living in Greece, I got this question all the time. People would ask me, because I was American, they'd say, oh, you're a writer. How do you do that when you're not subsidized by the government? And I always thought, well, that's really interesting. Let me see how I'm going to answer that today, because it would be different each time. It was fascinating, because they couldn't imagine how do you live? Well, you just live. You do it. You do it any which way, whatever the thing is. If you don't have any money, then you're broke. So you do something about that all along the way. Just make it up as you go along.
Sure. But even if you're broke and you have to live out of like a weekly hotel, it costs money. It costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so we do need money, unfortunately, to
Well, and then so you get money. You get money all kind of different ways. And everybody to each his own. And everybody different from one year to the next. So it's not a question that you answer overall, because it's different for everybody at different times.
Is there any shame in returning to a job years later? Let's suppose you were an artist or writer.
If you feel shame about it, there's shame. If you don't feel shame, there isn't.
Okay, so it's kind of, again, how we view it.
Yeah, it's just, whatever the person, whatever's going for them. And everybody, it's a personal trajectory for each one of us. Our meaning that we place on anything is our meaning. It isn't anybody else's meaning. And so, if you feel like I have a client, and she constantly goes back to the core family, and they were horrible to her. And she's an adult now, but she keeps finding a way to that she has to go back and live in their basement, that kind of thing. And that's correct for her, because she has to heal that thing. She cannot go on without healing that thing. And everybody would say to her, oh, don't. So they're wanting her to skip a step. And the step is they want her to be healed already. But she hasn't done it yet. She's got to just keep doing that until one day, it's going to be like a week from Tuesday, it's just, oh, I'm done, and walk out.
Well, sometimes bad circumstances can give you a real kick in the behind. Whereas when things are good and easy, you don't push yourself as much. So that's also sometimes I wonder why people go back to certain bad situations.
Well, maybe that works for them. Maybe something works different for you. Some people work very well. They beat themselves up, to do things. They punish themselves. Self-punishment is a very, very creative arena for a lot of people. And they like that. That makes them feel good that they've punished themselves. They're not going to have the ice cream because they didn't do the pages. Or have the ice cream, so it's, do you want avoidance? Do you want, whatever works for everybody, it's their choice.
What is a clairvoyant?
Oh, somebody who somebody who knows.
Okay.
Who knows.
So it's a seeing?
That's, yes, clairvoyant. Voy is seeing, clairsentient, clairaudient, they're all the senses. But yeah, it's that you get a sense of the thing and you know it to be true.
How did you realize you were clairvoyant?
I was born with it. It's remembrance is what it is. It's like kids forget the nature of what we really are as humans, and some don't forget, and I happen to be one of those.
Did it run in your family?
My mother was very clear, and also she's the only one I couldn't read her mind. And I think that was like so that I knew to be good at it, because it was, so she was pretty good, yeah.
When was the first time you realized that you had this gift?
Always. I think I realized that other people didn't. I thought, well, that's not true. They all have, but they don't know they have. So that was, I remember that early, that was a feeling that I had, was that everybody knows everything, but they're just, not utilizing that as much as somebody else might.
Well, there's thought that, we can stimulate certain things in our, hiking, meditation, being alone in nature, stimulate certain things to be able to tap into, sort of this records that, I don't know if it's called Akashic.
Akashic, yeah.
Records. But do you think we all have this ability, or people are just more sensitive than others?
Well, we all have it, but, some don't want to do that. They'd rather, fix a flat tire. There's just different skills that everybody can cultivate in the world. I remember in my block that I lived on, I could talk, all the dogs would talk to me, and most of the cats, although I'm not a cat person, so there weren't, I didn't have as a relationship with the cats as much as the dogs and the people. And, I knew what was going on with all the people in the neighborhood.
Is that hard, though? Because if you do pick up on things, maybe you don't really want to know about...
You don't want to know.
There's a lot of times that it'd be better with blinders on. And if you are sensitive and you can pick up on things, how do you say, you know what, I'm going to stay in my lane. I don't want to know in that lane.
No, I wanted to know everything.
Oh, you did want to know. Okay.
I want to know. And I did. I had I knew all the feelings that people had.
Sure.
And that was precious. That was, that was a wonderful treasure to be able to know people. And that doesn't mean that a lot of people didn't want to know, because I had to learn that they might not want to know about what's going on with them.
Oh, sure.
So then I had to not say.
Right. And is there, in the spiritual world, is there an ethical way to not bring up something, even if you know that something's wrong or something is pending.
Don't bring it up.
You don't bring it. Okay, it's as simple as that, right? And that is the ethical way to handle it.
I remember on my block, there was a young girl, and she had rheumatic fever, and her friend, they were playing, and they ran up the stairs, and her mother shouted at her, "Don't do that, don't do that," because she's got rheumatic fever, she could die. And the next day she died.
Oh no.
And so the girlfriend was all of her life. I mean, I know her now, and she was just she felt so upset about that. But the truth is that the young girl was so happy that she had her friend, and they ran up the stairs before she died. You know, that was what was a good thing for her. So I got to tell her that.
Is that similar to mediumship, where you're able to...
Medium, yeah, I can do that too.
So you're able to communicate with people that have passed on.
Mm-hmm.
And are any of those people that you've communicated with that have passed on, were they scared to have died?
Some were scared until they passed on, and then they weren't. You know, they had certainly some ideas about that. It's interesting. I'm working now with somebody who is in hospice, who she works with people who are dying, and she works with very high-powered people, CEOs, and you know, people in high areas of power, and they have regrets about their choices that they made for other people. In other words, if they're a head of a corporation and they know that the lake was being polluted by their manufacturer, and they still let that happen, they are very interested now from the other side to speak of what are people's regrets, and that they can do something about it before they die. So that's a project that's going on now.
That's fascinating, right? Because for lack of a better term, we hear the phrase that, like, corporate psychopath. That's something I've heard of. But if you realize that maybe that after the fact, I guess, passing on, that maybe if there were regrets, and that's something that's not part of...
It's interesting too, because if it's somebody who's very, very powerful, once they cross over, this is a different use of power for them to then wield, you know, what can they do now for those who are here to shift those regrets.
Interesting, that's true. So taking that powerful sort of will or personality, but then using it in a good way. Not that they use it in a bad way necessarily.
But they did use it in a bad way, which is why they regret it. They had regrets.
I see. Yeah.
And that's why they want to do something about it now.
That's fascinating.
Because of that.
Wow, that's really, really fascinating. Because we think that different people that made decisions about us and our life, or other people we read about, that they had no heart. But if we find out that actually maybe they were affected.
Yes, there's more of them that knew they were doing what was untenable to other people, unjust to people, but yet they went ahead and did it anyway. Sometimes you think, well, are they not thinking or not knowing that that's what's going on, but no, it was not caring.
Sure.
So that's would be a regret, I would think.
Right. Do you find that when you tell people that you're clairvoyant...
I don't tell them.
Oh, you don't tell them. Okay. What's the reason for that?
Well, because I don't, they don't care.
They don't care. Well, some people may keep coming to you with, hey, just like a doctor, I got this pain. Well, there's this one thing. Can I just ask you this question? Or should I buy this stock?
People come because I get this all the time when people call and they say, I don't know why I'm calling you, but so-and-so said, call Viki. So that's just it, call Viki. That's the only criteria.
Sure. So you don't, as a rule, say to people that you are clairvoyant. Do you find, though, if people find out that they may be scared or they are
They
intrigued?
probably roll their eyes or think, "Oh boy," I don't know what they think. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, right?
But when people call as clients, then we go from where they are, wherever they are, and whatever is needed at that position. So if it's if they want mediumship, if they want clairvoyance, or if they want just let's talk about your real estate,
Sure. Is clairvoyance the same as being an empath?
Well, similar. Yeah, empath is that you feel everything.
So it's similar, but maybe clairvoyant.
Clairvoyant has insightfulness to it, and that you see trajectories, you see stories, you see where people are in wounds in their whole architecture, in terms of like why they came into Earth, why they're here, what they're doing here, how they're progressing on what they're doing here, how that is going for them, what's stuck, what pains them, what would make them feel triumphant, where's their money, all of those things. It's all kind of written in front of them for what they're here to do.
Sure. And have you ever gone for a reading from another clairvoyant to see how
I
that
have.
would be?
Right now, I'm working with someone, and we're doing some amazing, just astonishing work on other planets and galaxies, and just what's future of Earth and where we're going in terms of humans, and so there's lots going on.
And would you say there are things to be happy about when we look at the news
Extremely.
cycle? Okay, we see, civil war.
Yeah, we
and-
see a lot of, right now, as you know, things are looking upside down. And they will continue to be upside down in order to go right side up. And that's what's occurring this year very rapidly. If you'll notice that you might have been fearful about something, and then you did it, and it was so easy. It worked. You think, oh, that never did that before like that. And that just like sensations of things moving along in a different kind of energy. Like you think the energy is going to be heavy, and then it's light, and it goes whoop, and then that surprises you, and then that sets you up for allowing the next thing to happen that is light and progresses from there. So that's what's going on now.
So in some sense, we have to get sort of all the, I know someone had used this analogy years ago, it's like a dirty sprinkler head, and get the dirty water out so that the clean water can come through.
Right, any analogy like that can work out. But there's a lot going on these days, like for instance, we're all looking at war on the 6 o'clock news, and all the destruction and rubble. It seems like we're seeing a lot of pictures of just, blah,
Yeah.
It's just destroyed. So these are important things for us to see. And that's not only in war rubble, but it's also earthquakes and floods and such. So it's just ruination, the falling down of. And chaos is there so that it goes through to order. Order dissolves into chaos. Chaos, sets up into order. So that's what's also occurring now. So it's all good news. It's just extraordinary for human beings right now to be going through what's going on.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to see people suffering, and you feel like you can't do anything about it. And even if you donate, it might not work. How am I helping someone?
So yeah, everybody's identity is up, And in identities, like for instance, yours might be how you see yourself as a helper, and then you see yourself powerless as a helper. Like, well, if you see yourself as a helper, then you're helping. But no, you have like a frustration about it. And so then that's the identity that's up. And that's an important one to be able to look at, because then you want to make choices around that. And you want to then decide, well, no, I want to be a helper. Who helps? Or I don't want to be a helper anymore. Or, you just look at the whole range of possibilities around that, and then you solidify where it is that you do stand in that. So everybody's identity is up now. Everybody on planet Earth. So it's pretty exciting times.
Yeah, but there's things to be, as dark as things look.
It's just all fine stuff. And every human is, humans are so precious. They're just going through it. And they're doing it. And, this is asking a lot. This is very difficult for people right now. Yeah. And everybody's doing it. And everybody signed up to be here now. They're thrilled to be here. Even though it might seem like a $20 burrito on a taco stand, it's like, it might be much to have to take care of.
You say you have full remembrance, a photographic memory? Is that the same thing?
No. It's, I just know where I came from. So that when I was born, I was, and you remember, it's like you remembered vaguely from then, and you have intuitive characteristics in yourself. So where did we come from? And did we come from someplace? Or who am I? Or what's what? Was I here before? No. Yes? Who am I? Where did I come from? What am I doing here? What do I contribute? So all those are things I knew. But people have to find those things out when they're here and decide for themselves.
Is clairvoyance similar to tarot, to Reiki healing?
Those are methodologies of healing. Reiki's very good in terms of energy in people, and that it's all energy in your body. And so then if you're living an energy of that's going to be a scrapey kind of bad disease thing. But if you change that energy to wah, maybe that's going to feel better. Maybe that's going to give you more expanded lungs or something. So that's Reiki. That's energy. That's a component. Reflexology is where you press the meridians of the foot with your socks on or off. And so there's many methodologies that are very beneficial. I used to talk about sound healing like 20, 30 years ago, and people would roll their eyes. But now it's becoming very prominent in the world, and it's very useful and effective.
Right, the sound bath.
Sound, everything,
it's like
yeah.
a gong.
Gong.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Just songs, like they identified that da-da-da-da is a cancer sound in the body. It's the rhythm of a cancer in the body.
Oh,
Da-da-da-da. Beethoven, when did he do? He composed that a long time ago.
That's fascinating. Is that because it's on a down note? Or we're going down?
Well, it's the rhythm. Da-da-da-da. That's not a health, that doesn't, don't you see the burden of it?
Yeah, it's heavy.
Like, it's a heavy duty thing. Whereas Bach, and that's really very healthy for people. It's just really amazing.
Wow.
Just sounds now. So on your cell phone, you could, if you have something going on, or maybe let's say you're in a car accident. Let's create this. If you're in a car accident and you press your phone a certain musical tone, you can walk away from the car accident. You know, because boom, the accident was that kind of a sensation and a energy. So the sound can be undo it.
Interesting.
Where, you know, all of this is open to us now. It's just phenomenal how things very quickly will start to fall into place now.